Draco's scales bristled with disgust as she stared at the holographic projection of Earth's lush forests. She hated everything about that primitive mudball, from its inefficient ecosystems to the warmongering humans who called it home. The young Voth scientist clenched her taloned hands, focusing on the task at hand, compiling her research on Earth's biosphere for military use. Alarms blared through the research facility on Voth Prime, interrupting Draco's work. Another human attack on a Voth colony, no doubt. The war over the Centauri star system had escalated rapidly, with both sides resorting to increasingly desperate measures. Draco's superiors had stressed the importance of her work in developing new weapons to use against the human threat. As Draco rushed to secure her data, a shadow moved in her peripheral vision. She whirled around, heart racing, but saw nothing. Unknown to her, Harry Reyes, a seasoned human special forces operative, crouched in the darkness nearby. He'd infiltrated the facility on a sabotage mission, but what he'd discovered changed everything. The Voth were developing a bioweapon capable of wiping out all life on Earth. Harry's muscles tensed as he weighed his options. His original mission was critical, but this new intel could save billions of lives. With a silent curse, he made his decision. He had to steal the bioweapon data and warn Earth, even if it meant blowing his cover. As Harry began hacking into the Voth computer systems, Draco received urgent orders. She was to transport her research to a secure military facility immediately. The young scientist gathered her data crystals and hurried to the transport bay, unaware of the human intruder mere meters away. Outside the research complex, Voth Prime's harsh landscape stretched to the horizon. Draco's transport sped across the rocky terrain, flanked by military escorts. In the distance, explosions lit up the night sky, signs of the ongoing civil conflict between the ruling Voth government and a rebel faction seeking to overthrow them. Suddenly, a missile streaked towards Draco's convoy. The transport swerved, but too late. The explosion sent it tumbling off the road, leaving a trail of wreckage. Draco, dazed and bleeding, crawled from the twisted metal. Her escorts lay dead around her, and the sound of approaching vehicles signaled the rebel attack wasn't over. Miles away, Harry Reyes sprinted through the wilderness, stolen data clutched to his chest. Voth security forces were in hot pursuit, their energy weapons scorching the ground at his heels. He needed an extraction, fast, but his comm link was damaged in the escape. Fate intervened as Harry crested a hill and spotted the smoking wreckage of Draco's convoy. He hesitated for a split second, years of combat training warring with his innate human compassion. The injured Voth scientist was an enemy, yes, but she was also a living being in desperate need of help. With a grimace, Harry made another fateful decision. He slid down the hillside towards Draco, knowing that saving her life might be the key to preventing a catastrophic attack on Earth. As he reached the crash site, Voth rebels appeared on the horizon. Harry grabbed Draco's arm, hauling her to her feet. "Come with me if you want to live," he growled in broken Voth, ignoring her shocked hiss at the sight of a human. As energy blasts rained down around them, Harry realized that his mission had just become far more complicated, and the fate of two worlds now rested on his shoulders. Harry's muscles burned as he half-dragged, half-carried the injured Voth scientist through the rugged terrain of Voth Prime. Draco's scales felt smooth and cool against his skin, a stark reminder of how alien his unwilling companion truly was. The sound of pursuit echoed in the distance, energy weapons and grav bikes closing in on their position. "We need to find cover," Harry muttered, scanning the horizon, his eyes locked onto a jagged outcropping of rock jutting from the barren landscape. "There!" As they stumbled towards the potential shelter, Draco's breathing grew labored. Green blood oozed from a gash in her side, staining Harry's combat fatigues. He gritted his teeth, knowing that if he couldn't stabilize her soon, all of this would be for nothing. The cave system they discovered was a maze of twisting tunnels and cavernous chambers. Harry's tactical flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing glints of metal and forgotten technology. "Jackpot," he whispered, guiding Draco towards what appeared to be an abandoned research station. Dust-covered consoles flickered to life as Harry activated the emergency power. His eyes widened at the sight of Voth medical equipment. Years of covert ops had given him a passing familiarity with xenotech, but this was well beyond his expertise. "Don't you dare die on me," Harry growled, laying Draco on a diagnostic bed. He fumbled with the controls, relying on intuition and the universal language of medical interfaces. A holographic display of Voth anatomy sprang to life, highlighting Draco's injuries in angry red. Hours passed as Harry worked, using dermal regenerators and organ stabilizers to pull the Voth back from the brink. When Draco's eyes finally fluttered open, Harry allowed himself a moment of relief. That relief was short-lived. With a hiss of fury, Draco lashed out, her talons raking across Harry's face. He stumbled back, blood trickling from shallow cuts. "Easy!" he shouted, raising his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." Draco snarled, her voice a mix of pain and hatred. "Human filth! I'll tear you apart!" Harry's training kicked in. He moved swiftly, pinning Draco's arms to her sides. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I saved your life because we have bigger problems. Your people are developing a bioweapon capable of wiping out all life on Earth. Billions of innocent lives are at stake." Draco's eyes narrowed, but she stopped struggling. "Lies," she spat. "You're a spy, nothing more." "See for yourself." Harry released her and pulled out a data crystal, inserting it into a nearby console. The screen filled with schematics, formulas, and test results, all pointing to a weapon of unimaginable destructive potential. As Draco scanned the information, her expression shifted from skepticism to horror. "This can't be right," she murmured, her scientific mind racing. "The dispersal pattern, the mutagenic properties. It wouldn't just target humans. The cascading effect could devastate entire ecosystems, including Voth worlds," Harry finished grimly. Draco's shoulders slumped. She looked at Harry, seeing him truly for the first time. "Why did you save me?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Harry replied simply. "And because I need your help to stop this." Reluctantly, Draco nodded. "What's your plan?" Before Harry could answer, a distant explosion rocked the cave. "First," he said, grabbing his gear, "we need to get off this rock." As they made their way through the tunnels, Harry's damaged comm unit crackled to life. Through bursts of static, he heard a familiar voice. "Commander Jack Stone." Ease respond. Bioweapon. Rescue team." The transmission cut out, leaving Harry with mixed feelings of hope and dread. If Stone was mounting a rescue, it meant Earth now knew of the threat. But it also meant the clock was ticking. Emerging from the caves, Harry and Draco found themselves overlooking a Voth military outpost. Sleek ships sat on landing pads, guarded by armed patrols. Their ticket off-world was tantalizingly close, yet impossibly far. "We'll never get past those guards," Draco hissed. Harry's eyes glinted with perseverance. "Watch and learn, Scales." Using stealth tech and old-fashioned ingenuity, they infiltrated the base. Harry's covert ops training paired surprisingly well with Draco's intimate knowledge of Voth systems. Together, they sabotaged security networks, created distractions, and slowly worked their way towards the communication center. As Harry hacked into the long-range transmitter, Draco stood watch. She found herself studying the human, noting the efficiency of his movements and the quick thinking that had kept them alive. It challenged everything she'd been taught about humans being inferior. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the facility, and a chilling voice echoed over the loudspeakers. "Attention all personnel. This is General Sauron. We have intruders in the compound. The human spy and the traitor Draco must be captured alive. Failure is not an option." Harry and Draco exchanged grim looks. "Sauron," Draco whispered, her scales paling. "He's in charge of the bioweapon project. If he's here—" "Then we're out of time," Harry finished. "We need to move. Now!" They fled the compound, energy bolts sizzling past them as Voth soldiers gave chase. The barren landscape offered little cover, and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them. Just as it seemed their luck had run out, salvation appeared in an unexpected form. A battered transport ship swooped low, laying down covering fire. A voice crackled over an open comm channel. "Need a lift, strangers?" With no other choice, Harry and Draco scrambled aboard. They found themselves face to face with a dozen armed Voth, led by a fierce-looking female. She eyed them with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "I am Zira," she announced, "leader of the Voth Liberation Front, and you two are now the most wanted individuals on the planet." Harry tensed, ready for a fight. But Draco stepped forward, her scientific mindset taking over. "You're the rebels fighting against the government," she said. "Why help us?" Zira's mandibles clicked in amusement. "The enemy of my enemy, as the humans say. We've been monitoring communications. We know about the bioweapon, and we want it stopped as much as you do." As the ship soared into the upper atmosphere, evading military pursuers, Harry and Draco found themselves with a moment to breathe. They exchanged glances, an unspoken agreement passing between them. They would work with Zira and her rebels, for now, but trust would not come easily. The transport shuddered as it broke free of Voth Prime's gravity well. Through a view screen, Harry watched the alien world shrink behind them. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a race against time to save not just Earth, but perhaps all life in the galaxy. Draco moved to stand beside him, her voice low. "I still hate you, human." Harry allowed himself a small smile. "Feelings mutual, Scales, but we're in this together now." As the stars streaked past, Harry knew their journey was just the beginning. The real challenges, in the true test of their unlikely alliance, were just beginning. Harry's words hung in the air as the rebel transport ship docked at a hidden base on one of Voth Prime's moons. Zira led them through winding corridors carved into the lunar rock, her scales gleaming under the harsh artificial light. The air was thick with tension and the acrid smell of weapon discharges. "Welcome to our humble abode," Zira said, gesturing to a cavernous command center filled with Voth rebels hunched over consoles and strategic displays. "Now let's discuss this bioweapon data you've acquired." Harry's instincts screamed danger as Zira's eyes narrowed, her focus laser-sharp on the data crystal he carried. He shared a quick glance with Draco, whose own posture had stiffened. "First," Harry said cautiously, "we need to know your plan. How do you intend to stop the bioweapons deployment?" Zira's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Stop it? Oh no, my dear human. We intend to use it." The words hit like a physical blow. Draco hissed, her claws flexing involuntarily. "Use it? That's madness. The cascading effect could devastate entire ecosystems." "A necessary sacrifice," Zira replied coldly. "We'll modify the weapon to target both humans and our own government. With our enemies eliminated, we can rebuild Voth society as it should be." Harry's hand inched towards his concealed sidearm. "That wasn't the deal. We came here for help, not genocide." "You came here because you had no choice," Zira snapped, signaling to her guards. "Now, hand over the data crystal, or we'll take it by force." Time seemed to slow as Harry assessed their options. Outnumbered, outgunned, trapped in an unfamiliar base, the odds were stacked against them. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was beating the odds. "Draco," Harry muttered, barely moving his lips. "On my signal, hit the lights." The Voth scientist gave an almost imperceptible nod, her hand hovering near a control panel. Harry took a deep breath, then moved with explosive speed. He hurled the data crystal high into the air, drawing every eye in the room. In that split second of distraction, he shouted, "Now!" Draco slammed her palm onto the panel, plunging the command center into darkness. Chaos erupted as rebels stumbled blindly, shouting in confusion. Harry's combat training kicked in. He moved silently through the mayhem, incapacitating guards with precise strikes. "This way!" Draco's voice cut through the din. Harry followed the sound, trusting her superior night vision. They sprinted through the base, alarms blaring in their wake. "We need a ship," Harry panted as they rounded a corner. "There," Draco pointed to a sleek Voth vessel in a small hangar bay. "It's our only chance." They raced towards the ship, energy bolts sizzling past them. Harry laid down covering fire with his stolen weapon, while Draco worked the airlock controls. The hatch hissed open just as a group of rebels burst into the hangar. "Go!" Harry shouted, diving into the ship behind Draco. The airlock sealed shut, muffling the sound of weapons fire pinging off the hull. Draco's claws flew over the unfamiliar controls, bringing the ship to life. "I hope you're as good a pilot as you claim, human," she said, vacating the pilot's seat. Harry grinned despite the dire situation. "Time to find out." The ship roared out of the hangar, banking hard to avoid defensive fire from the rebel base. Harry pushed the engines to their limit, feeling the G-forces press him into his seat as they climbed through the thin lunar atmosphere. "We've got company," Draco reported, monitoring the sensor readings. "Multiple pursuit craft launching." "Let's see how they like this," Harry muttered, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that would have turned a human pilot's stomach. The Voth ship responded beautifully, dancing between streams of enemy fire. They broke free of the moon's gravity well, the vast expanse of space opening before them. For a moment, Harry allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Then the sensor board lit up like a Christmas tree. "Voth military ships," Draco said, her voice tight with fear. "It's Sauron's fleet." A dozen capital ships filled with weapons blocked their path, surrounded by swarms of smaller craft. A chilling voice crackled over the comm system. "Attention, rebel vessel. This is General Sauron. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Harry's mind raced, assessing angles of approach, weapon capabilities, and potential weaknesses. It was a suicide mission, but they were out of options. "Draco," he said, his voice steady, "I need you on weapons and shields. Think you can handle it?" The Voth scientist nodded, her earlier hostility replaced by steadfast perseverance. "Just fly, human. I'll keep us alive." What followed was a dogfight for the ages. Harry pushed the ship beyond its design limits, corkscrewing through impossibly tight gaps in Sauron's formation. Draco proved to be a natural gunner, her reflexes complementing Harry's piloting in perfect synergy. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes crisscrossed the void, narrowly missing their small craft. The ship shuddered under near hits, shield strength dropping steadily. Harry's forehead beaded with sweat as he wove a deadly dance among the stars. "We can't keep this up forever," Draco shouted over the whine of overtaxed engines. "We don't have to," Harry replied, spotting a gap in Sauron's lines. "Hold on tight." He gunned the engines, aiming for the narrow opening. Draco laid down suppressing fire, keeping the Voth ships at bay for a few crucial seconds. They shot through the gap, alarms blaring as the hull temperature spiked from grazing shots. "Plot a hyperspace jump," Harry ordered. "Anywhere but here." Draco's claws flew over the nav computer. Course plotted, jumping in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the ship leapt into hyperspace, leaving the Voth fleet behind. Harry sagged in his seat, every muscle aching from the prolonged stress. For a long moment, only the hum of the hyperdrive broke the silence. Then, to Harry's surprise, Draco began to laugh. It was a strange, hissing sound, but unmistakably one of relief and shared triumph. "I can't believe we made it," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. Harry allowed himself a weary smile. Never underestimate human ingenuity, scales. As the adrenaline faded, the reality of their situation set in. They were alone in an alien ship, hunted by both the Voth military and rebel forces, with no clear plan or destination. "So?" Draco said, her voice softer than before. "What happens now?" Harry met her gaze, seeing not an enemy but a potential ally. "Now," he said, "we figure out how to save both our worlds." The ship streaked through hyperspace, carrying its unlikely crew towards an uncertain future. The real challenges still lay ahead, but for the first time since this mission began, Harry felt a spark of hope. Together, they just might have a chance. Chance. The hyperdrive disengaged, revealing a sight that made Harry's breath catch in his throat. The human fleet hung in space before them, facing off against an armada of Voth ships that dwarfed their own forces. "We made it," Draco said, her voice tinged with awe and fear. Harry nodded grimly, opening a secure channel to the human flagship. "This is Agent Potter, requesting immediate docking clearance." After a tense moment, Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the speakers. "Clearance granted, Agent Potter. We've been expecting you." As they approached the flagship, Harry could see the battle unfolding. Human fighters zipped between the lumbering capital ships, energy weapons painting the void with deadly light. He itched to be out there, where his skills could make a difference. The moment their ship touched down in the hangar bay, they were swarmed by a security team and whisked away to separate debriefings. Hours passed as Harry recounted every detail of their mission, the bioweapon data they'd stolen, and the betrayal by the Voth rebels. Finally, Admiral Chen entered the room, his face grave. "We're putting you back in the fight, Potter. Our pilots are good, but we need your expertise out there." Harry stood, dedication etched on his face. "Where do you need me, sir?" "Squad leader. Call sign, Talon. Your orders are to disrupt the Voth formation and buy us time. Our scientists are working on a countermeasure to the bioweapon, but they need more time." As Harry suited up and prepared to board his fighter, he caught sight of Draco being escorted to the science labs. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They both had roles to play in this bold strategy. The vacuum of space embraced Harry as he launched from the hangar bay, his squadron forming up around him. The comm crackled to life with the voices of his pilots, a mix of excitement and fear palpable in their chatter. "Talon Squad, this is Talon Leader," Harry's voice cut through the noise. "Stick to your wingmen and watch each other's backs. We're not here to be heroes. We're here to keep the Voth off balance and protect our fleet. Clear?" A chorus of affirmatives answered him. Harry allowed himself a small smile. These were good pilots, some of the best Earth had to offer. They'd need every ounce of skill to survive what was coming. The battle erupted into chaos as Harry led his squad into the fray. Voth fighters swarmed around them, their alien designs a stark contrast to the sleek human craft. Harry's hands danced over the controls, his fighter moving like an extension of his own body. He weaved through enemy fire, his own weapons finding their marks with unerring accuracy. "Talon 3, watch your 6, Harry barked, rolling his fighter into a tight turn. He lined up a shot on the Voth fighter pursuing his squad mate, watching with grim satisfaction as it erupted into a ball of flame. Inside the flagship, Draco hunched over a console, her claws flying across the alien interface. Human scientists worked alongside her, their initial suspicion giving way to respect as her expertise became apparent. "The protein marker," Draco muttered, her eyes scanning complex molecular diagrams. "If we can isolate it, we might be able to create a targeted antidote." A tremor ran through the ship as a Voth energy blast found its mark. Draco steadied herself, refusing to let the chaos of battle distract her from the vital work at hand. Back in space, Harry's squad had carved a path deep into the Voth formation. They pivoted and weaved, drawing enemy fire away from the vulnerable human capital ships. Harry's mind raced, analyzing patterns in the Voth attack strategy, seeking any advantage he could exploit. "Talon Squad, form up on me," he ordered, a plan taking shape. "We're going to hit their command ship. If we can take out their coordination, we might buy our fleet the time it needs." As Harry led his pilots on a daring attack run, alarms blared throughout the human flagship. Draco's head snapped up from her work, her scales paling as she heard the sounds of weapons fire within the ship itself. Commander Stone's voice boomed over the intercom, filled with fanatical zeal. "This is Commander Stone. I am assuming control of this vessel. All personnel are ordered to stand down and await further instructions." Draco hissed in frustration as the lab doors sealed, locking her and the science team inside. She could hear the sounds of struggle outside, loyalist crew members fighting against Stone's mutineers. In space, Harry's communicator crackled with an encrypted message from the flagship. His blood ran cold as he learned of Stone's betrayal and his plan to use the bioweapon against the Voth homeworld. "Talon Squad, new orders," Harry said, his voice tight with tension. "We're heading back to the flagship. Prepare for a combat landing in the main hangar bay." The human fighters broke off their attack run, streaking back towards their own fleet. Harry's mind raced, formulating a plan to breach the flagship's defenses and stop Stone before it was too late. As they approached, Harry saw that the hangar bay doors were sealed tight. He gritted his teeth, knowing what he had to do. "All units except for me, break off and provide cover fire. I'm going in alone." Ignoring the protests of his squad mates, Harry pushed his fighter to its limits. He aimed for a maintenance airlock, a target so small that even attempting to hit it was practically suicide. But Harry was no ordinary pilot. At the last possible second, Harry fired his maneuvering thrusters, aligning his ship perfectly with the airlock. The impact rattled his teeth and sent pain shooting through his body, but he was in. Forcing the cockpit open, Harry stumbled out into the corridor. His body ached from the crash, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He had to stop Stone, rescue the Admiral, and somehow save Draco and the science team. As he moved through the ship, the sounds of battle grew louder. Harry armed himself with a fallen crewman's weapon, his fist tight. The fate of 2 worlds now rested on his shoulders, and failure was not an option. Harry's fighters streaked towards the crippled human flagship, dodging debris and Voth attacks with practiced precision. The ship's hull loomed before him, scarred and venting atmosphere in places. He spotted a maintenance airlock and adjusted his trajectory, gritting his teeth as he prepared for a risky docking maneuver. The impact jarred his bones, but the seal held. Harry popped the cockpit and clambered into the airlock, cycling it with trembling fingers. As the inner door opened, acrid smoke assaulted his senses. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow through the corridors. Harry moved swiftly, weapon at the ready. The ship groaned around him, systems failing and hull integrity compromised. He encountered pockets of resistance, both human defenders and Voth boarders, as he made his way towards the bridge. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over a nearby comm panel. "All hands, evacuate to escape pods. Repeat, all hands evacuate." Harry quickened his pace, finally reaching the bridge. Chen stood at a flickering tactical display, his uniform singed and face grim. "Agent Potter," Chen acknowledged, "I need you to assist with the evacuation." Harry shook his head. "Sir, I have to find Draco. She's crucial to stopping this war." Chen's eyes narrowed, but after a moment, he nodded. "Take this," he said, handing Harry a compact device. "It's a portable life sign detector. It might help you locate her. But Potter, your priority is saving lives. Clear?" "Yes, sir," Harry replied, accepting the device. As Harry left the bridge, he heard Chen coordinating the final stages of the evacuation. The Admiral's calm voice belied the desperation of their situation. Harry consulted the life sign detector, noting clusters of signals throughout the ship. He chose the nearest group and set off, hoping to find Draco among the survivors. Meanwhile, Draco led a group of human scientists and crew members through the deteriorating vessel. Her claws flew over control panels, bypassing damaged systems and clearing their path. "This way," she hissed, ushering the group past a sealed bulkhead. "The escape pod bay is 2 decks down." A young ensign eyed her warily. "Why are you helping us?" Draco met his gaze. "Because this war benefits no one. We must work together if either of our species is to survive." As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Voth soldiers. Weapons raised on both sides, tensions high. Draco stepped forward, her voice steady. "Stand down. I am Scientist Draco of the Voth Research Division. These humans are under my protection." The Voth squad leader hesitated. "You collaborate with the enemy?" "I seek to prevent catastrophe," Draco countered. "The bioweapon threatens both our peoples. We must end this conflict before it's too late." A tense moment passed. Then slowly the Voth soldiers lowered their weapons. The squad leader nodded to Draco. "Go, but we cannot guarantee your safety from other patrols." As Draco led her group away, she saw newfound respect in the eyes of the human survivors. Their shared ordeal was forging unexpected bonds. Harry fought his way through the ship, dispatching Voth soldiers when necessary, but avoiding conflict where possible. The life sign detector led him to a maintenance shaft, where he found a group of injured crew members. "Agent Potter," one of them said, relief evident in her voice. "We thought everyone had evacuated." Harry helped them to their feet. "There's still time. Have you seen a Voth scientist? Female, goes by Draco?" The crew members exchanged glances. "She came through here earlier," another replied, leading a group towards the escape pods. She saved our lives, sir. Talked down a Voth patrol that would have killed us all." Harry felt a surge of pride. "That's her. Come on, let's get you to those escape pods." As they made their way through the ship, Harry's group encountered increasing resistance. Voth boarding parties clashed with human defenders in chaotic firefights. Harry used every trick in his arsenal to keep his charges safe, from clever diversions to well-placed shots that disabled rather than killed. Finally, they reached the escape pod bay. Harry's heart leapt as he saw Draco shepherding survivors into the remaining pods. Their eyes met across the room, a moment of shared relief amid the chaos. But their reunion was short-lived. A fresh wave of Voth soldiers poured into the bay, led by a towering figure Harry recognized as one of Sauron's lieutenants. "Take cover!" Harry shouted, pushing the survivors behind a barricade of supply crates. Draco dove for shelter as energy bolts sizzled through the air. Harry returned fire, his shots precise but vastly outnumbered. Draco attempted to reason with the Voth soldiers, her voice rising above the din of battle. "This is madness," she called out. "We are on the brink of mutual destruction. Stand down and let us go." The Voth lieutenant's response was a barrage of plasma fire that melted the deck plating near Draco's position. Harry knew they needed a diversion, or they'd all be dead in minutes. His eyes fell on a power conduit running along the wall. A crazy idea formed in his mind. "Draco!" he shouted. "Get everyone into the pods. I'll buy you time." Before she could protest, Harry sprinted from cover, drawing the Voth fire. He reached the power conduit and began rerouting its energy flow, his hands moving with desperate speed. The conduit overloaded with a thunderous boom, sending a shockwave through the bay. Debris rained down, temporarily cutting off the Voth advance. Harry turned to see Draco ushering the last survivors into an escape pod. "Harry!" she called, her voice tinged with fear and something else, something warmer. "Hurry!" But as Harry moved towards the pod, a section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking his path. He could hear Draco's voice over the ship's comm system, guiding him towards an alternate route. Harry raced through smoke-filled corridors, the ship breaking apart around him. He rounded a corner and came face to face with Sauron himself. The Voth leader's eyes blazed with fury. "You," Sauron snarled, "you've ruined everything." Harry raised his weapon, but Sauron knocked it aside with inhuman speed. They grappled in the flickering emergency lights, a desperate struggle amid the dying ship. Sauron's strength was incredible, but Harry's human agility and training gave him an edge in the confined space. He ducked under a swipe that would have taken his head off, then landed a series of quick strikes to Sauron's midsection. The ship lurched, throwing both combatants off balance. Harry seized the moment, using a judo throw to slam Sauron against the bulkhead. The Voth leader slumped, momentarily stunned. Harry stood over his fallen opponent, adrenaline surging. It would be easy to end it here, to eliminate one of the greatest threats to humanity. But as he looked at Sauron, he saw not a monster, but a being capable of change. "This ends now," Harry said, his voice firm, "but not with your death. We have to break this cycle of violence, or both our species are doomed." Sauron's eyes widened, incredulity mixing with something like respect. Harry didn't wait for a response. He turned and sprinted towards the escape pod bay, Draco's voice in his ear guiding him home. He burst into the bay just as warning klaxons blared. The ship was entering the atmosphere, breaking up around them. Draco reached out, pulling Harry into the pod with strength born of desperation. The hatch sealed and they launched, streaking away from the disintegrating flagship. Through the viewport, they watched as the massive ship plummeted towards the planet's surface, a fiery testament to the cost of war. In the cramped confines of the escape pod, humans and Voth alike huddled together. Harry found himself next to Draco, their shoulders touching. He turned to her, seeing the weight of their ordeal in her reptilian eyes. "What now?" she asked softly. Harry looked out at the star-filled void, acutely aware of their precarious situation. Stranded in Voth space, supplies limited, no rescue in sight. Yet as he felt Draco's presence beside him, he knew they had already achieved something remarkable. "Now," he said, his voice low but determined, "we find a way to end this war. Together." Draco nodded, her scales gleaming in the starlight. Around them, humans and Voth began to talk, sharing water and rations. It was a small step, but a significant one. As the escape pod drifted through space, Harry and Draco began to plan. Their journey was far from finished, but for the first time, the possibility of peace seemed within reach. The escape pod drifted silently through the vast expanse of Voth-controlled space. Days passed in a blur of recycled air and dwindling hope. Harry watched as their supplies diminished rapidly, each rationed meal a stark reminder of their precarious situation. Tensions simmered in the cramped confines of the pod. Human survivors cast wary glances at Draco, their trust in the Voth scientists strained by years of conflict. Harry found himself constantly mediating disputes, his voice hoarse from hours of negotiation. "We're all in this together," he reminded them, his eyes moving from face to face. "Our survival depends on cooperation." Draco worked tirelessly, her claws flying over the pod's systems as she sought to extend their life support. Harry admired her dedication, but he couldn't ignore the growing hollowness in her eyes. On the fifth day, as hope for rescue faded, a chirp from the navigation console startled them all. Harry's heart raced as he examined the readout. "There's a planet nearby," he announced, his voice cutting through the pod's oppressive silence. "Breathable atmosphere, similar gravity to Earth." A collective exhale of relief swept through the pod. Harry met Draco's gaze, seeing his own mix of hope and apprehension mirrored in her reptilian features. "Can we make it?" she asked, her voice low. Harry's hands moved over the controls, assessing their options. "It'll be close, but yes, we don't have much choice." He took the helm, guiding the pod towards their only chance at survival. The descent was harrowing, the heat shield barely holding as they plummeted through the alien atmosphere. Alarms blared, and the pod shuddered violently. "Brace for impact!" Harry shouted moments before they struck the planet's surface. The crash threw them about like ragdolls. When the pod finally came to rest, Harry picked himself up, his head spinning. Around him, groans of pain filled the air. "Status report," he called out, moving to check on the nearest survivor. As the adrenaline faded, the extent of their situation became clear. Several survivors were injured, some critically. Harry organized a triage system, using their limited medical supplies with grim efficiency. Draco emerged from the wreckage, her scales scratched but otherwise unharmed. Her eyes widened as she took in their surroundings, a dense forest of alien vegetation, towering trees with iridescent leaves stretching towards a purple sky. "I'll survey the area," she announced, her scientific curiosity evident despite their dire circumstances. "Perhaps I can identify edible plant life." Harry nodded, grateful for her expertise. As Draco ventured into the alien forest, he focused on establishing a secure perimeter around the crash site. Hours later, Draco returned with an armful of strange flora. She worked methodically, analyzing each specimen and consulting the data stored in her neural implants. "These roots are safe for human consumption," she explained, demonstrating how to prepare them, "and the liquid in these pods can be used to purify water." Her knowledge proved invaluable as they established a makeshift camp. Human survivors, initially skeptical, began to rely on Draco's expertise. Harry watched with quiet satisfaction as barriers slowly eroded. Days passed as they settled into a routine. Harry led scouting missions, mapping the surrounding area and searching for resources. On one such expedition, he crested a hill and froze, awestruck by the sight before him. Alien ruins stretched across the valley, their graceful spires defying gravity. At the center stood a massive structure that pulsed with faint energy. "Draco," Harry called into his communicator, "you need to see this." Together they explored the ruins, marveling at the advanced technology left behind by an unknown civilization. In the central structure, they discovered what appeared to be a communications array. "If we can repair this," Harry mused, running his hand along a control panel, "we might be able to send a distress signal." Draco nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "It will take time, but I believe it's possible." They threw themselves into the task, salvaging parts from the escape pod and adapting them to the alien technology. Draco's knowledge of Voth systems proved crucial in deciphering the unfamiliar interfaces. As they worked side by side, Harry found himself drawn to Draco in ways he hadn't anticipated. Her perseverance, her brilliance, her unexpected moments of vulnerability, all combined to challenge his preconceptions. One evening, as they took a break from their labors, Draco suddenly tensed. "Harry," she whispered, her eyes fixed on something behind him. Harry turned slowly, his breath catching as he saw the creature emerging from the underbrush. It was massive, with multiple limbs and rows of gleaming teeth. Before he could react, it lunged at Draco. Without hesitation, Harry threw himself between Draco and the beast. He grappled with it, using every combat technique he knew. The creature's claws raked his back, but adrenaline dulled the pain. Finally, he managed to drive it off, collapsing to the ground as it retreated into the forest. Draco rushed to his side, her hands gentle as she examined his wounds. "You saved my life," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Again." Harry managed a weak smile. "Consider us even." As Draco tended to his injuries, they talked, really talked, for the first time, about their fears, their hopes, the weight of expectations placed upon them by their respective societies. "I never imagined I could feel this way about a human," Draco admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Harry reached out, his fingers intertwining with her claws. "Neither did I." Their moment was interrupted by a triumphant shout from the camp. They rushed back to find the communication array humming with life. "We did it," one of the human technicians exclaimed. "The signal's broadcasting." As relief washed over the group, Harry couldn't shake a sense of unease. He knew their ordeal was far from finished. Somewhere out there, someone had heard their call. Now they could only wait and hope that those who came in answer were friends rather than foes. Foes? The clearing erupted with activity as three distinct groups converged on their position. Harry's heart sank as he recognized the crisp uniforms of Earth's military, led by the stern-faced Admiral Chen. Opposite them, a contingent of heavily armed Voth soldiers materialized from the underbrush, their scales glinting in the alien sunlight. At their head stood a familiar figure, Sauron, his eyes burning with awe-inspiring fury. Before either group could make a move, a shimmering distortion in the air heralded the arrival of the third faction. Sleek, otherworldly vessels descended from the purple sky, their design unlike anything Harry had ever seen. As the ships touched down, tall, ethereal beings emerged, the Arbiters. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the tense silence. "All Voth present are to surrender immediately. That includes you, Draco." Sauron's reply was a guttural snarl. "Humans, lay down your weapons and submit to Voth authority or face annihilation." The lead arbiter stepped forward, its voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "We have observed your conflict long enough. It ends now, by our hand if necessary." Harry exchanged a quick glance with Draco. They had come too far, endured too much to let it all fall apart now. Without a word, they moved as one, positioning themselves between the three factions. "Wait," Harry called out, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Before anyone does anything they'll regret, hear us out." Draco nodded, her scales shimmering as she addressed the gathered forces. "We've seen firsthand what cooperation between our species can achieve." Together they recounted their harrowing journey, the crash, their struggle for survival, and the bonds forged in the face of adversity. Harry described Draco's invaluable contributions, while she spoke of the humans' ingenuity and adaptability. As they talked, the hostility in the air began to waver. The Arbiter leader tilted its head, intrigued. "Your experience is unexpected. Perhaps there is more to your species than we first believed." "We propose a solution," another Arbiter announced. "Peace negotiations hosted on our neutral homeworld. These two," it gestured to Harry and Draco, "will serve as key witnesses to the potential for coexistence." Admiral Chen's teeth clenched, but he nodded grudgingly. "We're willing to consider it." Sauron's eyes narrowed, but he too saw the opportunity. "The Voth will participate under the right conditions." As the groups began to disperse to make preparations, a blood-curdling screech split the air. From the dense alien forest emerged a nightmarish creature, a fusion of Terran theropod and Voth apex predator. Its scales rippled with iridescent patterns, and rows of razor-sharp teeth glinted in its massive jaws. More screeches answered the first, and suddenly the clearing was alive with motion. Massive predators burst from the tree line, their eyes fixed hungrily on the gathered species. "Defensive positions," Harry shouted, his military training kicking in. To his surprise, both human and Voth soldiers responded, forming a perimeter around the civilians and dignitaries. Draco's voice rang out, clear and precise. "Aim for the junction between the neck and shoulder. There's a cluster of nerve endings. A direct hit will paralyze them." The air filled with the sound of energy weapons and the hiss of Voth plasma rifles. Harry found himself shoulder to shoulder with a Voth warrior, coordinating their fire to bring down one of the larger beasts. Nearby, he glimpsed Admiral Chen and Sauron fighting back to back, their earlier animosity forgotten in the heat of battle. The Arbiters joined the fray, their advanced weaponry carving swaths through the attacking creatures. Yet for every beast that fell, two more seemed to take its place. "Harry!" Draco's voice cut through the chaos. She stood at the edge of the perimeter, her eyes fixed on a colossal predator that dwarfed its brethren. "That one's the Alpha. If we can bring it down, the others might retreat." Without hesitation, Harry sprinted to her side. They moved in perfect sync, dodging the creature's lightning-fast strikes while maneuvering into position. Draco's claws raked across its flank, drawing its attention, while Harry circled behind. With a running leap, Harry landed on the beast's back, clinging to its scales as it bucked and roared. Draco darted in, delivering precise strikes to vulnerable points she had identified. Their teamwork, honed during long days of survival, proved devastating. As Harry plunged his combat knife into the creature's spine, Draco landed a final crushing blow to its skull. The Alpha crashed to the ground, and a hush fell over the battlefield. The remaining predators, sensing the shift in power, melted back into the forest. In the aftermath, Harry surveyed the scene. Humans and Voth alike were tending to each other's wounds, sharing supplies and battlefield camaraderie. Admiral Chen and Sauron stood together, engaged in quiet conversation, their expressions thoughtful rather than hostile. The Arbiter leader approached Harry and Draco. "You have exceeded our expectations. Perhaps there is hope for your species after all." As the various groups began to board the Arbiter vessel, a deafening hum filled the air. The ground trembled, and in the distance the ruins Harry had discovered earlier pulsed with energy. "The planetary defense system is activating," an Arbiter technician called out. "It's interpreting our presence as a threat. If we don't deactivate it, the planet will become uninhabitable within hours." The Arbiter captain turned to the assembled leaders. "Our ship cannot break atmosphere until the system is shut down. We're all trapped here." Harry met Draco's eyes, seeing his own purpose reflected there. They both knew what had to be done. "We'll lead a team to the ruins," Harry announced. "We can shut it down." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "I'll send my best people with you." "As will I," Sauron added, his voice gruff but not unkind. As Harry and Draco prepared to set out, the weight of their mission settled upon them. The fate of both their species and the fragile peace they had fostered now rested on their shoulders. With a shared nod of understanding, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges the alien ruins might hold. Harry and Draco led the hastily assembled team towards the pulsing ruins. The ground trembled beneath their feet, each step a reminder of the ticking clock they faced. Behind them, a motley crew of humans and Voth moved in tense formation, eyeing each other warily even as they worked together. As they pressed deeper into the alien jungle, the environment seemed to come alive with hostility. Vines whipped across their path, thorns catching on scales and fabric alike. A faint rumble in the distance grew to a deafening roar as storm clouds gathered overhead, casting an eerie green glow across the landscape. "Watch your step," Harry called out as a section of ground gave way beneath a Voth soldier's foot. He lunged forward, grasping the warrior's arm and hauling him to safety. The Voth nodded gratefully, surprise evident in his reptilian features. Draco's voice cut through the rising wind. "The atmospheric pressure is dropping rapidly. We need to find shelter before—" Her words were lost as a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, sending splinters flying. The group scattered, taking cover where they could. "Over there," A human scientist pointed towards a rocky outcropping. Those formations should provide some protection. As they huddled beneath the stone, Harry felt Draco's scales brush against his arm. Her presence was oddly comforting amidst the chaos. "The ruins are just beyond that ridge," she said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "But this storm—" Harry nodded grimly. "We'll have to make a run for it. Everyone, stay close." They emerged from their shelter into a maelstrom. Wind-driven debris pelted them from all sides as they fought their way forward. A Voth engineer stumbled, nearly falling into a rapidly forming sinkhole. Without hesitation, a human marine grabbed him, pulling him to safety. Finally, they reached the base of the ruins. The massive structure loomed above them, its surface now crackling with energy. As they approached the entrance, a shimmering barrier sprang to life. "It's some kind of force field," a human technician shouted over the howling wind. Draco stepped forward, her claws outstretched. "There's a biological component to the interface. I think I can—" As her scales made contact with the field, it flared brightly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, an opening appeared. "Quickly!" Harry ushered the team inside. As the last member crossed the threshold, the barrier snapped back into place, leaving them in eerie silence. The interior of the ruins was a maze of pulsing circuitry and organic-looking growths. As they ventured deeper, holographic displays flickered to life around them, filling the air with swirling alien script. "This writing," a Voth scientist murmured, "it's like nothing I've ever seen." Harry watched as Draco's eyes darted from one display to another, her mind working furiously. "It's not just writing," she said slowly. It's a test." As if in response to her words, the holograms coalesced into a single, massive projection. It showed their two species, human and Voth, locked in conflict. Then gradually, the images shifted, showing scenes of cooperation, of shared discovery. "This planet," Harry breathed, "it's been watching us all along." A booming voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language neither human nor Voth. Yet somehow they all understood its meaning. "You have entered the Crucible. Your actions here will determine the fate of your peoples." The team exchanged nervous glances. Harry stepped forward, his voice steady. "We're ready. What do we need to do?" The hologram shifted again, revealing a complex series of interconnected systems. "To deactivate the planetary defenses, you must work together. Each challenge requires the unique strengths of both your species." What followed was a grueling test of skill and trust. Human computational expertise meshed with Voth biological intuition as they tackled increasingly difficult puzzles. At each stage, they were forced to rely on each other, setting aside centuries of mistrust. Harry found himself working in perfect sync with Draco, their experiences together allowing them to anticipate each other's moves. As they approached the final challenge, he caught her eye, seeing his own perseverance reflected there. The last obstacle was a massive door, covered in a web of pulsing organic material. A holographic interface hovered before it, displaying a complex logic puzzle. "This is it," Draco said, her claws hovering over the biological components. "Harry, I need you to solve the puzzle while I interface with the organic systems. But there's a risk. If we make a mistake, the defense system could accelerate its countdown." Harry nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "I trust you, Draco. Let's do this." As Draco merged her consciousness with the alien technology, Harry threw himself into the puzzle. Numbers and symbols danced before his eyes as he worked through the problem, calling out instructions to Draco as he went. The minutes ticked by, each second bringing them closer to catastrophe. Finally, with a triumphant shout, Harry input the last sequence. The door began to slide open, revealing the central control room. But their elation was short-lived. As they entered the chamber, a final hologram appeared, delivering a chilling message. To complete the deactivation, one must remain behind. Harry stepped forward without hesitation. "I'll do it. Draco, your knowledge is crucial for the peace talks. You have to go." Draco's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with drive. "No, there has to be another way." As alarms blared around them, signaling the imminent activation of the defense system, Draco's mind raced. Her claws flew over the control panel, interfacing with the alien technology at a level deeper than before. Harry, I think I can modify the system, but it's going to have consequences. We'll both be able to escape, but it will trigger an electromagnetic pulse. All advanced technology on the planet's surface will be destroyed. Harry didn't hesitate. Do it! With a final, complex series of manipulations, Draco activated the sequence. The ruins began to shake, energy building to a crescendo. Run! Harry shouted, grabbing Draco's arm. They sprinted through the collapsing structure, the rest of the team close behind. As they burst out into the open air, a blinding flash lit up the sky. Every piece of technology they carried went dead in an instant. As the dust settled, Harry looked around at their ragged group. Humans and Voth alike stood together, united by their shared ordeal. We did it, Draco said softly, her scales gleaming in the alien sunlight. Harry nodded, but his expression remained grim. We did, but our job's not finished yet. We need to get back to the Arbiter ship and make sure this peace holds. As they began the long trek back, relying on primitive survival skills and newfound cooperation, none of them could have anticipated the new threat that was about to emerge, one that would test their fragile alliance to its very limits. As Harry and Draco led their exhausted team back towards the Arbiter ship, the jungle seemed to have lost some of its earlier hostility. The eerie green glow had faded, replaced by the warm light of the alien sun filtering through the canopy. Yet the peace was short-lived. A distant rumble caught Harry's attention. He held up a hand, signaling the group to halt. Do you hear that? Draco cocked her head, her reptilian senses picking up vibrations through the ground. It's coming from the direction of the ship. Before anyone could respond, a deafening explosion shattered the air. Through gaps in the foliage, they caught glimpses of smoke rising from the Arbiter vessel. We're under attack, shouted a Voth soldier, his scales dripping with alarm. Harry's mind raced, assessing the situation. Double time, people! We need to get back now! As they sprinted through the underbrush, the sounds of battle grew louder. Emerging from the tree line, they were met with a scene of chaos. A fleet of sleek, predatory ships swarmed around the Arbiter vessel, their weapons leaving scorch marks on its gleaming hull. Crowl! Draco hissed, her eyes narrowing as she recognized the insignia on the attacking ships. The Voth supremacist faction. Harry watched as the Arbiter ship's shields flickered under the assault. Those defenses won't hold forever. We need to get on board and help. As if in response to his words, a hatch on the underside of the Arbiter ship opened. A voice crackled over their communication devices, which had thankfully reactivated after the EMP. This is Admiral Chen. All personnel, get to the ship immediately. We're preparing for emergency liftoff. Harry and Draco exchanged a glance, then sprinted towards the opening, urging their team forward. As they raced up the ramp, Harry caught sight of Admiral Chen and Sauron standing side by side in the cargo bay, coordinating the incoming personnel. The moment the last team member crossed the threshold, the hatch began to close. Harry felt the deck vibrate beneath his feet as the ship's engines roared to life. Report to your stations, Sauron barked, his usually imperious tone tinged with urgency. We need every able body to repel these attackers. Harry stepped forward. Sir, what's our status? Chen turned to him, his expression grim. Krawl's forces caught us off guard. They've disabled our long-range communications and weapon systems. We're barely keeping them at bay with our shields. I can help coordinate our defenses, Harry offered. I've had experience with joint operations. Chen and Sauron exchanged a look, years of mistrust momentarily forgotten in the face of a common enemy. Chen nodded. Do it. We'll support you from the command center. As Chen and Sauron hurried off, Draco approached Harry. I should head to the science lab. The Arbiters might need help fortifying the ship's systems. Harry caught her arm. Be careful. We don't know if any of Krawl's forces have managed to board. Draco's scales shimmered with purpose. You too, Harry. Don't do anything foolish. With a final nod, they parted ways. Harry made his way to the ship's tactical center, his mind already formulating strategies. As he entered, he was met with a scene of controlled chaos. Humans and Voth alike manned various stations, their earlier animosity set aside in the face of a greater threat. "Attention, everyone," Harry called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "I need status reports from all sections. We're going to coordinate our efforts to repel these attackers." As information poured in, Harry began to form a clearer picture of their situation. The Arbiter ship's advanced shielding was holding, but only just. Krall's forces were probing for weaknesses, their attacks growing more coordinated by the minute. Harry's fingers flew over the tactical display, arranging their limited resources for maximum effect. Divert power from non-essential systems to reinforce the aft shields. They're trying to flank us. A human technician called out, "Sir, we've detected a breach in the outer hull. Deck 7, Section C." Harry's mind raced. "Security teams to Deck 7. I want a mix of human and Voth personnel. Their fighting styles should complement each other in close quarters." As he issued orders, Harry felt the ship shudder beneath his feet. An alarm blared, signaling another hull breach. "They're boarding in multiple locations," a Voth officer reported, his tail lashing with agitation. Harry gritted his teeth. "I'm going down there. Keep coordinating our defense from here." Grabbing a weapon, Harry sprinted towards the nearest breach point. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Draco. "Harry!" she exclaimed. "I was just coming to find you. I've made a discovery about Krall's ships." "Walk and talk," Harry said, gesturing for her to follow as he continued towards the sounds of fighting. Draco fell into step beside him. "Their propulsion systems have a weakness. A targeted electromagnetic pulse could disable their entire fleet without harming our ship." Harry's eyes lit up. That could turn the tide. But how do we generate a pulse like that? "We'd need to reconfigure the ship's power core," Draco explained. "It's risky, especially with boarders in the ship, but it might be our only chance." They reached a junction where a group of human and Voth soldiers were exchanging fire with Krall's forces. Harry pulled Draco behind cover as energy bolts sizzled past. "I'll clear a path to the power core," Harry shouted over the din of battle. "Can you handle the reconfiguration?" Draco nodded, her scales gleaming with tenacity. "I'll need your help for part of it, but yes." Harry signaled to the nearby soldiers. "We're heading for the power core. Cover us!" As they pushed forward, Harry marveled at how seamlessly the human and Voth forces worked together. The humans' adaptability complemented the Voth's raw strength and advanced weaponry, allowing them to steadily push back Krall's boarding parties. Finally, they reached the power core chamber. The massive, pulsing heart of the ship filled the room with a low hum. Draco immediately set to work, her claws dancing over the control panels. "Harry, I need you to reroute power from the tertiary systems while I modify the core's output," she called out. As they worked in tandem, Harry couldn't help but admire their newfound synchronicity. Each anticipated the other's needs, moving in perfect harmony despite the chaos around them. Suddenly, the door to the chamber burst open. A squad of Krall's elite guards poured in, their weapons trained on Harry and Draco. "Step away from the core," their leader snarled. Harry's hand inched towards his weapon. "Draco, how much longer?" 30 seconds, she whispered back. Harry nodded almost imperceptibly, then launched himself at the guards. He ducked and weaved, using his smaller size to his advantage against the larger Voth. His sudden attack caught them off guard, buying precious seconds for Draco to complete the reconfiguration. As Harry grappled with one of the guards, he heard Draco shout, "It's done!" Before he could respond, a familiar voice cut through the room. "Well done, my misguided brothers, but I'm afraid your efforts are in vain." Krall himself stepped into the chamber, his imposing figure radiating arrogance and disdain. His eyes locked onto Draco. "Sister," he said, his voice smooth and persuasive, "why do you side with these mammals? Remember your heritage, your superiority. Join me, and we can ensure the Voth take their rightful place as rulers of the galaxy." Harry watched, his heart pounding, as Draco's eyes darted between Krall and himself. For a moment, her hand hovered over the activation switch for the electromagnetic pulse. "Draco," Harry said softly, not daring to move. "Whatever you choose, I trust you." Draco's gaze met Harry's, And in that instant, a universe of understanding passed between them. With a swift motion, she slammed her hand down on the switch. A wave of energy pulsed through the ship, and beyond, the sounds of battle abruptly ceased. Krall's expression twisted from confidence to fury as his communication device went dead. "What have you done?" he roared, lunging towards Draco. Harry intercepted him, using the Voth's momentum against him. As they grappled, Draco's voice rang out over the ship's intercom. "Attention all personnel. Krall's fleet has been disabled. Security teams converge on the power core. We have the enemy leader contained." As if summoned by her words, Admiral Chen and Sauron burst into the room, followed by a mixed team of human and Voth security forces. They quickly overwhelmed Krall's remaining guards. Krall, seeing his defeat, made a desperate lunge for the power core's controls. "If I can't have victory, I'll ensure none of us do." Harry and Draco moved as one, intercepting Krall before he could reach the delicate systems. In a fluid motion that spoke of their growing connection, Draco used her superior strength to restrain Krall, while Harry deftly neutralized him with a precise strike. As Krall slumped to the ground, unconscious, an eerie quiet fell over the chamber. Admiral Chen stepped forward, his expression a mix of relief and wary hope. "It seems," he said slowly, "that we have much to discuss regarding the future of our peoples." Sauron nodded, his usual hostility tempered by the events of the day. "Indeed, perhaps there is more to be gained through cooperation than conflict." As the security team led Krall away, Harry found himself standing next to Draco. The adrenaline of battle was fading, leaving behind a complex swirl of emotions. "We did it," Draco said softly, her scales shimmering in the pulsing light of the power core. Harry nodded, acutely aware of how close they were standing. "We did, but something tells me our job isn't finished yet." Draco's lips curved into a small smile. "No, I suppose it isn't. The real challenge begins now." As they made their way to the bridge, where the arbiters were no doubt preparing for the peace negotiations to come, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. The future stretched before them, full of uncertainty and promise in equal measure. The arbiter ship hummed to life around them, setting course for the neutral negotiation grounds. As they stepped onto the bridge, Harry and Draco exchanged a glance, both aware that their evolving relationship would be at the center of this historic moment. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a living embodiment of the potential for human-Voth cooperation. Cooperation. The journey to the neutral negotiation grounds was tense, filled with a palpable mixture of hope and apprehension. As the arbiter ship approached the massive space station orbiting a swirling gas giant, Harry found himself standing beside Draco on the observation deck, their reflections ghostly against the backdrop of stars. "It's beautiful," Draco murmured, her scales shifting in subtle patterns of awe and nervousness. Harry nodded, his own stomach churning with a complex blend of emotions. "And terrifying. Everything we've been through, everything we've learned, it all comes down to this." As they docked, the delegations prepared to disembark. Admiral Chen and Sauron stood at the forefront, their postures rigid with the weight of their responsibilities. Harry couldn't help but notice how the two leaders, once bitter enemies, now moved in unconscious synchronicity, a reflection of the changing tide between their species. The station's grand assembly hall buzzed with activity as humans and Voth alike took their seats. The air was thick with anticipation and lingering distrust. Harry and Draco were ushered to a small antechamber where they would wait to address the gathered delegations. "Are you ready for this?" Harry asked, his voice low. Draco's tail swished nervously. "As ready as I'll ever be. You?" "Same," Harry replied with a wry smile. "Let's just hope our story can make a difference." As they were introduced, Harry and Draco stepped onto the raised platform. The hall fell silent, all eyes fixed upon the unlikely pair. Harry took a deep breath and began to speak. "Not long ago, I saw Draco as my enemy," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I was certain that our species could never coexist, let alone cooperate." Draco picked up the thread. "And I viewed humans as inferior beings, unworthy of sharing our galaxy. We were both trapped by our prejudices, blinded by fear and misunderstanding. They continued, weaving the tale of their journey from adversaries to allies, from distrust to friendship. As they spoke of the challenges they'd faced together, of how they'd come to rely on each other's strengths, Harry noticed a change in the audience. The initial skepticism began to soften, replaced by curiosity, and, in some faces, a glimmer of hope. But not all were swayed. Harry caught sight of a human general, his face twisted in disgust, and a Voth high priest whose eyes burned with impossibly strong fury. He made a mental note to keep an eye on them. As Draco concluded their speech, her words resonating through the hall, Harry felt a swell of pride and affection. They had come so far, and yet the world exploded. A series of deafening blasts rocked the station, throwing Harry and Draco to the ground. Screams and shouts filled the air as smoke billowed from multiple points around the assembly hall. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending bodies and debris flying. "Draco!" Harry yelled, reaching out to grab her hand. "Are you all right?" She nodded, her eyes wide with shock. "What's happening?" Before Harry could respond, Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone remain calm. Security teams, secure the exits and begin evacuation procedures." Harry's training kicked in. He pulled himself to his feet, steadying Draco as another gravity fluctuation hit. "We need to help. Draco, can you work with the engineers to stabilize the station systems?" Draco nodded, her shock transforming into willpower. "I'm on it. Be careful, Harry." As Draco raced off towards the engineering section, Harry made his way to Admiral Chen and Sauron, who were coordinating the emergency response. "Sir," Harry reported, "I'm ready to assist. What do you need?" Chen's eyes were grim. "We've got reports of armed extremists throughout the station, both human and Voth. They're targeting critical systems and attacking civilians." Sauron hissed in frustration. "We should have anticipated this. The treaty has many enemies." "We need to neutralize the threat and evacuate as many as we can," Chen continued. "Potter, can you lead a joint strike team?" Harry nodded, already formulating a plan. "Yes, sir. I'll need a mix of human and Voth personnel. We'll be stronger together." As Harry assembled his team, reports flooded in of failing life support systems and critical damage to the station's reactor. He pushed aside his worry for Draco, focusing on the task at hand. "Listen up," he addressed his mixed squad of humans and Voth. "We're facing enemies on both sides who want to destroy everything we've worked for, but we're going to show them what we can accomplish when we work together. Watch each other's backs, use your unique strengths, and remember, we're all on the same side now." With nods of understanding, the team moved out. They navigated through smoke-filled corridors and fluctuating gravity fields, fending off attacks from both human and Voth extremists. Harry marveled at how quickly his team adapted, human agility complementing Voth strength, their diverse tactics keeping their opponents off balance. As they fought their way through the station, Harry's calm crackled to life. Draco's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Harry, we've stabilized life support, but the reactor is critical. We need more time to find a solution." "Understood," Harry replied, ducking as an energy blast sizzled overhead. "We're tracking down the leaders of this attack. Hopefully, we can end this soon." They pushed forward, and Harry's instincts led them to a sealed chamber near the heart of the station. With a coordinated effort, they breached the door, revealing the human general and Voth high priest Harry had noticed earlier. The two leaders, startled by the joint human-Voth assault team, raised their weapons. Harry stepped forward, his own weapon lowered. "It's over," he said firmly. "Look around you. Look at what we've accomplished together. Is this destruction really what you want for our people?" The general snarled. "We can't trust them. This treaty will be the end of humanity." The Voth priest hissed in agreement. "The Voth must remain pure and dominant." Harry shook his head, remembering his own journey with Draco. "I used to think like you, but I've seen what we can achieve when we put aside our fears and work together. We're not losing our identities. We're growing, becoming stronger." He gestured to his team. "Human ingenuity and adaptability, Voth strength and advanced technology. Together, we're more than the sum of our parts. We can face the challenges of the galaxy united, or we can destroy ourselves fighting against the tide of change. The general and priest exchanged uncertain glances, their commitment wavering. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. As his team secured the extremist leaders, Harry's calm crackled again. Draco's voice was urgent. Harry, we've found a solution for the reactor, but it requires manual adjustment. The radiation levels are lethal. Harry's heart sank, but he knew what he had to do. I'm on my way. Racing to the engineering section, Harry found Draco working frantically with a mixed team of human and Voth engineers. She looked up as he entered, her eyes widening in understanding. No, she said firmly. I know what you're thinking, but I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Harry opened his mouth to argue, but Draco cut him off. I have another idea. We can create a radiation suit using a combination of human materials and Voth biotechnology. It's untested, but it's our best shot. As the engineering team rushed to assemble the hybrid suit, Harry marveled at Draco's brilliance. In mere minutes, he found himself encased in the strange, pulsing material. Draco's voice came through his helmet. I'll guide you through the process. Just come back to me, okay? Harry nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Always. He stepped into the reactor chamber, the Geiger counter in his suit screaming warnings. Following Draco's calm instructions, he began the delicate process of adjusting the reactor core. The work was grueling, each movement precisely calculated. Harry could feel the suit degrading under the intense radiation, but he pressed on. As he made the final adjustment, he felt the reactor stabilize beneath his hands. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by alarm as his suit's integrity failed. He stumbled towards the airlock, his vision blurring. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Draco's face, her scales shimmering with fear and drive, as she rushed towards him with a medical team in tow. Harry's world faded to black, the fate of two species hanging in the balance.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.